Hello to our Glass and Metal Marketing Group. I am so excited to today be inaugurating our first video for Glass and Metal Marketers. And to start us off, we have one of the biggest kahunas, one of the top poobahs in the industry. We have Fernando Diez, Vice President of Marketing for Vitro with us. And Fernando, welcome.
Thank you, Deb. I'm delighted to be here, and thank you very much for inviting me to this podcast.
Certainly, and thank you for being our inaugural guest. I think that your words of wisdom are going to help all of the glass marketers throughout the industry, so thank you for doing this.
Again, no, thank you for having me. I feel distinguished by having this invitation.
And we feel honored. Thank you. Why don't we start off with a little bit of background about you? Tell us a little bit about your trajectory to get to where you are now.
Absolutely. So I've been in the glass industry almost for 7 years now. Joined back in early 2019. It has felt like 7 months and not 7 years. So
just a year before COVID. How great,
that's
right?
Yeah, exactly. So I came to Vitro, and a couple of months after, I had to spend a lot of time working from home. But fortunately, my first couple of months, I spent a lot of time visiting fabricators, visiting even construction sites to get to know not only how glass is made and fabricated, but how it is installed and how is it set up in the buildings and homes that we see out there. Before joining Vitro, I spent 8 years in the chemical industry.
Oh, interesting.
That's right. I started my career in sales, working with a bunch of different industries that go from agrochemicals, cosmetics, paints, and so on. And at the very end of my time at my previous company, I joined an insulation business. So I led the marketing team for polyurethanes for Latin America, and that's where I started to get really close to sustainable buildings. Energy efficiency, occupant comfort, and so on. And at some point in time, that's where I met other players in the industry that made energy efficient products, just like glass. Mm-hmm. And eventually, that's how I got invited to join Vitro and join the glass industry. And I've done my entire career in marketing roles at Vitro, going from marketing related to promotion, publicity, advertising, communications, and so on, for which we have great teams in both Mexico and the US. And most recently, also in charge of the innovation and product management department, which are all brilliant people that help us develop the new glass products that the architects, the design community, and the entire value chain is looking for.
And we were talking before we started filming, and you told me that you've been living in Pittsburgh for the last 2 years.
That's right.
Just love those winters, right?
Oh yeah. So I'm originally from Mexico. I started my career with Vitro in Mexico and moved over here back in 2023, so we were speaking that I've survived 2 winters already, but the reality is I enjoy it very much. Vitro is made of great people, and not only Vitro, but our customers, the people we know in the industry, and everyone that's around glass is just fantastic, so it's been a wonderful ride so far.
You have an interesting, one of the most interesting things you just said was that you started in sales and you moved to marketing.
Yep.
And I know that over the years I've seen a lot of people try and make that jump and not be successful at it. So right. Why do you think you were able to make it work so successfully?
Yeah, no, and I love the question, and I'm going to tell you a short story. Back in 2017, when I had been in sales for almost 7 years, a marketing director in my previous company gave me a call when I interviewed, and I applied for the marketing position. And I always keep this in mind because these words are pure wisdom. He told me that the main difference between sales and marketing was that sales was a lot of action and marketing was a lot of reflection, okay? So I kept that a lot in mind when I made the move, because in reality, when you're out there in sales, you gotta be excellent at execution, implementation. It's a very quick, there's a lot of speed, there's a lot of action that needs to take place. But when you move over to the marketing world, you need to take a step back, take a breath, mm-hmm. and you need to be very careful of knowing that even if you feel the need to go out there and sell and talk price volume with customers and go out there and do the thing, you need to assume that you're now on a more strategic role, in the sense that you need to be taking a stance where you really understand the wants and needs of the market. You need to focus more on the bigger picture, translate that into a product that's viable economically, technically, performance-wise, and that's something that will be easy to adopt by the market where you're going to position it. And then you got to follow through and make sure that the value proposition, your go-to-market strategy, is fit enough so that you get the buy-in you need from your sales teams internally, and you also get the buy-in from the market that understands, accepts, and eventually is able to buy your product. So I think that the secret is knowing your role very well, while at the same time ensuring a very close collaboration with internal stakeholders, very specifically the sales team, just as important, the technical and the specification team, and in the world of marketing and product development, the R&D team, which are the brilliant minds that also help us come up with the new products.
Well, that's a great segue into one of my questions, which I'll ask you now, which is, I know you have product launch coming up in the fall.
Oh, yeah.
And we don't need to talk about the specifics of that yet, because I know you're not ready. But just in general, when you are getting ready for a product launch, because most of the people watching this video are do the same thing, what are some of the techniques and advice you would suggest and give to the audience?
Absolutely. I think that the two most important recommendations is specifically, so when you follow, many companies follow what we call a stage gate process, where you go from product ideation, then validation, concepts, technical feasibility, and so on. And when you reach the final stages of this process, you're reaching what we call the launch phase. Okay, so that launch phase can last for a couple of months, but I think that is one of the most critical stages where you need to focus on two things. First of all, you need to make sure that you are very clear and very consistent on the value proposition that you're going to offer with your product. Actually, sometimes we forget that the value proposition might be different to different actors in the value chain. So when we developed a new piece of glass, the value prop might look different for an architect, for a fabricator, or for an installer, a glazing contractor. And we need to be very clear on how we communicate and how we articulate that value proposition so that the message resonates appropriately with each audience. So I would recommend spending as much time as you can on defining very well that value proposition and work very closely with your sales teams, because those people that are on the front line, that are every day talking to the market and to the different actors, can provide very, very extremely insightful suggestions for you to come up with an aligned value prop for your new product. And the second thing that I think is very important is to spend enough time making sure that your commercial team is very, very well acquainted with your product. Sometimes we want to rush and launch before we actually know that every piece of the puzzle is set correctly, so that when our teams that go out there and actually start talking to the product, the people who are going to adopt your product, they need to have the right tools, they need to have the right education, the right training, so that they feel comfortable with what they're selling, because there's nothing as powerful as somebody who's out there talking to a customer that is convinced about the value proposition of their own product. So for me, it all boils down to coming up with a very, very detailed and aligned value proposition, and on the second level, to be very aligned with the implementation teams that are going to go out there and put the product in the market, going from advertising and publicity all the way to actual commercialization and sales of the actual product.
Well, you can see your background in sales, because you want to make sure that those sales teams are totally well-versed, right?
Yep.
And sometimes, sales personnel are like, just give it to me, just let me sell it,
Right.
and you have to temper that a little bit.
Right. Now, for me, one of the most important relationships in any company is the relationship between sales and marketing, because we can be excellent in the products we develop, in how we brand them, how we advertise them, but we're only as successful eventually, not the only metric, but probably one of the most relevant ones, in how much the market actually adopts a product. And the other way around, if all that homework isn't done properly, if we rush through the branding, which is an art and a science, it's a very, very important subject. If we rush through let's say the product trials or the product testing to make sure it'll perform as expected in the market, if we rush through all of that because sales wants to have something tomorrow to meet quota or to get the recognition, then it's not going to work out eventually, So you got to be very diligent. You got to be very mindful of following those steps, I would say. But once again, making sure that alignment happens before you launch, so that when the product is out there in the field, everybody knows what role to play.
That makes a lot of sense, too, because we've all seen examples, of course not from Vitro, but examples where different expectations were set than what the product could do, and it ends up killing the whole category.
Absolutely.
As opposed to just even that product. It takes that category out for the industry.
Absolutely.
So that's great. Let's talk a little bit about the product mixes and how you reach your customers. because, you know, when I started, there weren't that many avenues to do
Right.
that. And when you started, there were probably less too.
Yeah.
I mean, probably social media was just coming into play, and now we have so many different areas. How do you decide where you're going to focus for a particular product? Is it based more on where the customers are? Is it based more on certain types of research? I'd be really interested to know. I'm sure our audience will too.
Absolutely, it's a great question. Well, I think that first of all, you need to understand where your audience is consuming their information. That's the most important thing. So an architect doesn't consume information the same place where, let's say, a fabricator consumes information, or an interior designer doesn't, you know, exactly go to the same place for finding out new stuff than what a glazing contractor would do. So first is understanding where these people live, by live I mean where these people go and spend their time.
Where their eyeballs are, right?
Exactly,
Yeah.
there you go. So where they spend time looking for new stuff or looking for information, so to speak. So once you understand that, you need to come up with a strategy where you both invest the right amount of time and effort on that space while crafting the adequate value proposition for that audience, and I come back to that and I'll give you some examples, to make sure that your message is relevant, is consistent, and is at the right time and at the right place for those type of audiences. So to give you an example, might sound simple, but I think it provides a nice illustration of this concept. Probably if you're thinking about an interior designer, and again, I'm just going to throw out examples there.
Sure.
Probably an interior designer, what's most important for them is looking at images, pictures of finished jobs, looking at the combination of how glass mixes with other colors in the interior. When you do, let's say, an office interior and you have an internal partition, how it mixes with the furniture, how it mixes with the wallpaper, the paint, and so on. So in that sense, for us, it is really important to captivate that audience, to provide high quality imagery, and that turns into a strategy for us to be able to capture as most project photography as possible to be able to resonate with the audience. However, if you're thinking, let's say, about a fabricator, probably for them the most important thing is not looking just at beautiful photos. For them it is very important that we provide technical manuals, technical content for them of how to improve their yield, how to improve their efficiency, their productivity, let's say when cutting and processing low E glass. So coming up with content that helps them with tips and tricks to be more efficient and to be more profitable eventually at their shop and to have less quality concerns, less rejects, is super important to them. And probably these guys are not going to find that on Instagram. Right. Probably you need to come up with, let's say, a website, just like we have our Glass Education Center, just to give an example, where you can deliver these courses, you can deliver these trainings, and be relevant to them in what they're looking for. So once again, in summary, I would say understand where your audience is going to consume information and make sure that you understand what drives them, what they're interested in, so that you can develop the right content at the right time as well.
That's so interesting, because until you just said it, I wouldn't have expected so much of a focus in your work toward fabricators to be focused on yield and efficiency. It makes sense once you say it, but it was something that I just hadn't thought about before.
Oh yeah, no, when you really think about the value chain of how glass gets made and it eventually turns into a window at home or a facade at a big building, there's so many actors involved and so many different priorities and so many different areas of interest that part of the work we do in marketing is understanding what is important for each of those audiences, and once again make sure we develop content that is relevant and that is useful for those type of audiences.
And as you mentioned fabricators, it made me think that you all have access to a lot of top fabricators. You have an excellent certified fabricator program. And so, not asking you to kind of name names, but can you give me an idea when you see a fabricator really doing a good job at marketing their company, what some of those characteristics that they have are?
Absolutely, yeah. No, it's a great question. We've seen with the passing of time more fabricators engage in actually promoting their capabilities, promoting some of their finished jobs. And we love when people from our certified network come to us and want to collaborate in doing, joint pieces or sharing photography or sharing case studies, because in the end, if our fabricators are successful, we are successful, And if they're successful, then their customer, which is the glazing contractor, is going to be as well, and that eventually means a successful building or a successful installation or application going down the way. So I think that's what's most important, and we encourage all our fabricators to do this all the time, is even if they're a manufacturing facility ultimately, just like we are, they still need to understand and spend some time with their marketing teams, really getting what their own customer, which is the glazing contractor, their immediate customer values, so that they can in turn develop those marketing pieces, those marketing advice, those elements that can differentiate them beyond the actual fabricated piece of glass, the service, or the price that they offer. So it's a matter of communicating the capabilities they have. And in our network, we have a lot of people that can do extremely innovative, extremely sophisticated pieces of glass. I mean, you name it, triple units with laminated inboards, bent glass, heat soaking tests for wherever that is needed, extremely high performing, impact resistant glass, digitally printed, a bunch of things that not only look beautiful but are high performing for some of the most strict demands, either code driven or design driven demands. So the fact that they continue to communicate, it all boils down to communication. What doesn't get communicated, doesn't really generate the awareness. People don't really hear about it. It's almost like if it doesn't exist, so to speak. So the whole point is we encourage and we work together with our fabricators to support them as much as possible with knowledge, with content, and with Vitro support as their preferred supplier and preferred partner for them to be able to win more business. If they do so, we win with them as well.
That's great, and I've seen that trajectory with some of your fabricator customers,
Yep.
which is pretty neat. Let me ask you a little bit of a question about your mix of where you focus, finding those eyeballs on. So, for example, social media is very big now.
Yep.
Social media effective is always a good question, but I read something a few weeks ago that said marketers were the original influencers. Do you think that that's true?
Yeah, I think that the word influencer has changed its meaning across the last couple of years, and now that you mentioned that, I in turn read another article that said that at least in business to consumer brands, the use of influencers as we currently know them, so people that go on social media and promote or endorse a product, is actually going down because our brands are returning to more traditional forms of communication. So I think that there's trends and there's changes with the passing of time, but in reality, the way I see, so when I spoke about that saying that one of my former bosses said about reaction versus action, or action versus reflection, the other big thing is that in marketing, we need to be very, very aware that our job, more than selling, is influencing. And not only, once again, internal audiences, but also all the external audiences, and not only who buys our product, not only who we make that transaction with, but the entire universe of people that at some point will have even a small part of the decision of what glass gets placed on a building. A good example of that is we speak a lot about the architect or the design figure in the value chain, which of course leads the whole concept of the building, writes ultimately the specification and so on. But equally important is the developer or the owner of that building. Like I always say, those are the guys that are going to bring the money and they're going to take the risk and get that building built. So if we're able to, from the marketing standpoint, be able to reach those audiences in order to influence them positively towards some of our solutions, then the possibility of actually winning that job with Vitro Glass or with whatever your product is will eventually, ultimately increase. So the more people you're able to touch on the value chain, to influence on the value chain, the higher your chances are of getting success, whatever that means in the industry you're in, right?
Very interesting. I'm going to ask you a question that I know people watching this video
Sure.
would want to ask. You all have done a number of forays into sports marketing.
Yep.
What kind of steps do you take to evaluate whether a particular sports marketing program will be successful or not?
Yeah, no, it's a great question, and very specifically, we started a marketing alliance. So we became proud partners of the Pittsburgh Steelers. Was a year and a half ago, so we're entering our second season, especially now that everybody's talking football now with the season about to start. So I think the most important thing is, and the particular reason why we took this path with the Steelers is, we understood that for the Vitro brand to eventually have an awareness boost in some of our markets, both in the regional standpoint and also in the I would say, end consumer or influence or main influencer standpoint was that as we're a B2B brand, ultimately, you don't go and buy a Vitro window. We know that. You don't buy a Vitro facade, you buy a facade with solar band or Vitro glass in it. We wanted to expand how our brand reached some of these audiences by partnering with a very familiar face, so to speak, for many consumers and many people also in the region, and I'm going to talk about that in a moment. So when we started discussions with the Steelers, we learned that not only the Steelers is a top 25 global brand in sports, so from the likes of the Yankees, the Lakers, Real Madrid in Europe, and so on, the Steelers makes that list. That meant that at the moment that we were able to lock up our logos and put us together as a partner of them, the Vitro awareness would have a very positive impact, not only the US but globally, because this is we're able to promote this alliance in all the different markets that we participate, including Canada, Mexico, and beyond. So that was one thing. You asked about how we evaluate the potential of that. There's many ways, but not only do third-party information helps us in that decision. So just to give you an example, we found out from different sources like Forbes and The Economist and so on, where you see those top marketing brands and you read success stories of other companies that have done this type of alliances and how their brand awareness has increased in a very relevant way. Also, the other big driver for us was that as after the acquisition of PPG almost 7 or 8 years ago, we also found a very big opportunity to continue generating awareness for the Vitro name in the Pittsburgh region, in the Western Pennsylvania region, right? So for us, it was also a matter of also taking Vitro a step beyond, a step higher, and making sure that our local communities, that our local stakeholders continue to get to know us as somebody who is investing in the region, who is bringing jobs to the region, and help us put that Vitro name out there in a louder and a better way, So it's been super positive. It's been a great experience. It's also created a lot of, I would say, internal pride in many of our employees and collaborators.
And everybody asks you if you have tickets, right?
Of course, everybody wants to go and shake now Aaron Rodgers' hand. So, anyways, leaving a little the team aside, the whole point is this is just another strategy. It is not our strategy. It's just like social media, just like us trade shows, just like us print, just like our direct marketing via our field teams. This is just one more component that we chose to add and that we believe it has been successful in its particular objectives. And of course, it brings also a nice twist to Vitro as becoming a company that's more, I would say, reachable, accessible, more,
Probably good for attracting local talent too.
Absolutely, yeah. From the workplace standpoint and from talent attraction, of course, people see the, in this case, the Steelers logo, and they feel a sense of familiarity, a sense of it brings us a nice touch in that sense as well.
Very neat. Thank you for sharing that. There are not a lot of companies that do that on quite the level you do, so I think it's going to be really interesting for everyone to hear your thoughts. Thank you.
Oh, for sure.
I have one more area
Sure.
to talk about, and then I'll let you go.
Oh, no.
And that is AI in marketing.
Okay.
And AI and what you're doing. And Ricardo was interviewed before our discussion by Ellen, and he mentioned that you were doing some good things in that area. So I want to ask you what you are able to share about
Absolutely.
what you're doing.
And maybe he spoke about this or not, but I'm not going to get too deep into that because I'm going to answer the question more from the marketing and the customer-facing standpoint. But there's a lot of things that we're doing from a manufacturing standpoint to incorporate AI in our own processes. So think about a glass production line which continuously runs 24 days a year, 365 days a year, 24 hours a day. It's a line that never stops. So the more you're able to generate data or mega data to understand and control it in a better way and predict what's going to happen, that reduces your downtime, reduces your maintenance costs, reduces your quality defects, a bunch of things that eventually translate into savings that we are able to then look how to translate on being more competitive in our products to the market. So there's a lot of AI going on to the manufacturing part of the company. Now, talking more about that market and how to implement AI for our value chain and for our customers, I think there's a lot of hype. I'm proud to say, more than proud, it's more a story I always like to tell, but
badge of honor.
But let me tell you a story. So it was back in late 2022, feels like a lifetime ago. I invited over some friends when I still lived back in Monterrey before moving to Pittsburgh. One of them has a very interesting story because he got a job in Uber 10 or 15 years ago when Uber was a 20-person company. So the guy started in Silicon Valley. He was super successful. He loves programming. He loves code. Anyway, he then moved back to Mexico and got a job in different companies. So I invited him over to my place for a barbecue. And then he goes like, hey guys, you ever heard of something called ChatGPT? Nobody knew what that was. It was a new word for everyone.
Yeah.
Remember, almost 3 years ago. I'm like, no, what is it? And he says, I'm going to show you. He pulls out his phone, opens up a really weird thing, starts asking questions, asking for images, and so on. And the moment that he showed that to everyone, it was like dark magic. Everybody was super surprised. So obviously, with the passing of weeks and months, the entire world started learning of the potential of AI, and now we have so many different AIs, so much being spoken about it, and I think it brings a great opportunity to understand how to use it, not for the sake just of using it, but for delivering value to your audiences in the right way, So in our case, I'm going to use an example. One of the things, speaking about the fabricator example, one of the things that we noticed is that many of our fabricator customers tend to have a lot of questions for our technical services group, which is the people inside Vitro that can help you, how to temper better your product, how to have less quality problems, I don't know, what is the best cutting fluid to use for solar bank glass and so on, all those type of questions. We have a lot of documents around that, but all of them are really long, really complex, really detailed documents that probably the fabricator doesn't want to take time of going to the website, opening it up. They want to be on the shop floor, cutting glass and doing, getting IGs made. So a solution for that is we found, well, what if instead of, having to wait for, reaching a technical services guy, explaining the issue, maybe the guy is out on vacation, talking to another customer, maybe he'll call you back and for you it's something that you want to resolve in the moment. Why don't we create an AI-powered chatbot that can answer all of these frequently asked questions that can help a fabricator solve something really quick and with just a quick type of the question. So that's how we came out with our chatbot called TechQuest AI, which is available to our certified fabricators in its full version with access to exclusive documents that they enjoy for being part of the network, exclusive information and answers. And we've also deployed it very recently on our public website, where even architects, the general public, can go in and ask questions about glass in general. So it's really interesting, really useful, because they can even understand, what's the difference between a fully tempered glass and a heat strengthened
I was impressed by it because you know how bad some of the chatbots
are,
right? You say, what time can I pick this up? And it says, how is your mother? You know?
Exactly.
But this was right on point. Whatever chatbot programming you work with is really
so
done a good job.
We feel really proud about it. We've gotten some really good feedback. And just like anything, these chatbots keep learning and improving on their own, plus the continuous review that we give it to make sure that it continues delivering the answers as most precise and as most relevant as possible. And if you've used it, let me give you a quick tip, because I really like when I go in and do this, sometimes for fun and sometimes for actual work. If you ask it a question, whatever question you want to ask it, it's going to give you back an answer. But if you then ask it to give you the same answer but explain it to a 4-year-old, you'll be surprised on how he delivers the exact same message, but he's going to explain it with little cars and toys and stuff, or with apples and bananas kind of thing. So really amazing, because that's the power of AI, and a tool that can deliver stuff quick, stuff that's assertive, stuff that's relevant. And of course, we always encourage our customers that if they need a human conversation or a more complex issue, of course, our normal resources will be available as well.
You know, one of the most telling things that you said when we were talking about the barbecue, you mentioned that that was just 36 months ago.
Right, exactly.
And no one had heard of it. And look at the world just 36 months later, right? The rate of change around this is going to be phenomenal.
Oh, it's just wild how, you know, it's like a, maybe not the best example, but like a wildfire. Once it started, it spread really quick. Some other things, you know, think about glass manufacturing. It hasn't changed in decades. And AI, in just 3 years, maybe even 2 years, it changed the world.
Figured it out, yeah.
So really interesting how technology changes us. And the most important thing as marketers or as other companies in businesses, yes, AI is important, but make sure you know what value is bringing to your customer or to your audience before implementing it just for the sake of putting something out there.
Good point. Well, and I wanted to thank you for all your time, and this is great advice, and thank you for sharing some of your personal stories too.
Absolutely.
You have a group of marketers out here that are probably hanging on your every word. Is there anything else you would like to share before we end our interview?
First of all, it's been my pleasure. Thank you very much for having me. Not really, just again, thank you for watching. My advice is for you marketers out there, make sure, again, just want to summarize some of my key points. Make sure that you take enough time to reflect and to give some thought. Sometimes it is very tempting to go out and act, but you need to take a step back as being the strategists in your company on what really your market needs, your market wants. And the other thing is the importance of alignment. Make sure that your value proposition, your product, your timelines are very well aligned with other internal stakeholders, because the more aligned you are internally, the more probabilities of success you're gonna have when you go out and launch externally your products or services. So once again, thank you for having me, and always a pleasure talking to you.
It was wonderful. Thank you so much for being here.
I appreciate it.
Thank you, Fernando.